Thanks for coming tonight, and thanks Nicola, that was a really good presentation. I really loved some of the stuff that's going on here as well, you know, this talk about team spirit, teams adapting between Scrum and Kanban when they need to, recognising sometimes you have to do non-agile stuff when you need to get stuff out the door. And doing what's right for the business and revisiting it. These are all really important agile things, and I know they don't tick every agile box. I think they're wonderful and they're what we really need to get to. And the reason why I've called out is that it ties into what I'm here to present. I've called this, trust me, I'm an expert, the truth about agile. So I'm not saying I'm an agile expert. But there is a bit of a cult in Agile of experts that will sometimes tell you you must do things, but they're not always the right things. And what I wanted to talk about was getting back to the basics of Agile and what Agile really means and what Agile actually is. So a little bit about me. I've been in software engineering and product land for over 20 years. I started out in development and I moved into architecture and agile, and I've worked across data, mobile and web. A big part of me does product. I've always been running technology teams in companies like this where product is really core to what the company does, so I understand how important product is. I've worked at lots of startups, and I've worked at some startups that became really huge companies like 3 UK in the early days. I was working there when they launched their first 3G portals in the UK. And then more recently I've moved into interim management. And what I've been doing for the last 8 years or so is a mixture of agile maturity exercises, transformation, engineering enablement, technology programs, technology transformation that goes not just with Agile, but getting some fundamentals fixed so that we can start doing Agile, and technology leadership. So whenever I'm talking about Agile through this, just take it to mean interchangeably Agile and software. So I see some problems in the Agile and software world, and I think we need to get back to basics with them. A lot of times, a lot of companies will live in this crazy complex world, and the bigger the company, sometimes the bigger the dysfunction. And I think the thing that we need to get to grips with, and that's been concerning me for a while, is that this is a problem. Sometimes when we do Agile, we try to do everything too early, and we don't realize sometimes that a lot of things that we talk about are what good looks like, and sometimes trying to overstretch and get there too quickly cannot be a bad thing. But it's very scary. You have to keep struggling to get there. You always have to keep moving in that direction. But for me, the core thing about Agile that makes it super powerful and really a great thing is that it identifies complex things and it tries to make them simple. And at the heart of Agile, there's some very simple principles that we just need to bear in mind as we go on our Agile journeys. Now, I like this picture because I put it here, and I just found it randomly on the internet, but it speaks to me because this guy's moving away from all of that. You know, he's gone out on a limb. He's been brave, and I think that's an important part of Agile as well, is being brave, trying new things, and in Nicola's presentation, that seems to be happening a lot, and that's really the essence of what Agile is, trying new things, finding out what works for your team, finding out what the business needs, how you can deliver it better, and keep going. So, Agile has matured, you know, it's been around for a long time, and people can't quite agree on where and when it started, but most people think about late 90s or early 2000s was when it really came into prominence. But what we've come to now is that there are so many different aspects of Agile to consider. There are so many flavors on it. There are so many frameworks. There are so many ways to become a Scrum Master. There are different flavors of certification from different groups who authorize and try to look after standards. So in all of this, everyone's trying to do the right thing and everyone's very passionate about Agile, which is a great thing. But it has become kind of fragmented. And what I'm finding with business users and people in the business is that they become quite baffled about Agile at times. So I'm here to just really get this simplicity thing across and to try and look at ways that we can make Agile more simple and accessible for business. Now, this slide didn't come out very well. It looked much better on my laptop, but there's this concept in Lean, and probably a lot of people will know about it, and it's about overburden. Overburden just means too much top-down management and too much stuff to do, too many checkboxes to tick. And sometimes Agile teams get into a habit of going through ceremonies and doing things that aren't really contributing because perhaps they're not ready to do them just yet. So in the final state, when we're doing mature Agile, they need to be there, and these are hallmarks of really mature Agile teams that can do this. But if you find that some things are painful, and you get this a lot with Agile, is that we want to do our stand-ups, we want to do our retros, planning is really hard. What that actually indicates is a problem somewhere else, okay? So we need to get back to the basics and explore those systemic things. We're also fragmented. Something that hasn't been great, and I don't know if people have been on LinkedIn much these days, probably. There's quite a lot of warfare going on LinkedIn, and I just don't think that's good for our community at all. And people are really fighting over semantics and things like that. Again, we've forgotten why Agile came into being. We want to deliver better software. We want to do it faster. It's all about people and teams. So that fragmentation, we need to start establishing one voice, and I think that's going to come as we understand simplicity again. And that ties into the fourth thing. A lot of these threads that I'm reading, they just make me despair, to be honest. There's a real lack of respect. There's loads of chest beating. And really, the thing about Agile is that Agile is a great tool. It's a great way to do things, and I love Agile. I've always loved Agile. But apply it to the wrong thing, and things get pretty funky. And getting to the stage of maturity where you can do Agile is sometimes a big task in itself, but it all boils down to people and teams and respect and understanding the other side of the conversation, and I don't think that happens enough. And that leads into the last thing, that there's sometimes quite a lot of dissatisfaction around Agile. You know, people will tell me sometimes Agile gets blamed for this, or Agile didn't work there, or we got hung out to dry at this company. I work with lots of Agile coaches in the Agile community, and sometimes it can be a tough gig, you know, for people. And we're not addressing why those dissatisfactions are coming, and those come through honest conversation. And all of these things I'm presenting, you know, they all tie together. But the biggest problem of all is that the problem always comes before the solution. All our Agile techniques are wonderful. They're extremely useful, and they're like tools in a toolbox. You have to know which one to take out to use when, and what it means and how to use it. You need to understand at the beginning what the business problem that you're trying to solve is, and solve that. And you find that when you attack things from that angle, a lot of things just naturally work themselves out. So sometimes we become very focused on our techniques. Why is my stand-up more than 15 minutes? Why is planning so hard? And we take measures to reduce the length of the stand-up, which is the wrong thing to do. It means, again, there's the problem somewhere else, and we need to talk about it. So we need to get away from the tools, everybody here, I imagine, is an expert in the Agile toolset, but we need to treat that as a tool set and really get into some deep and meaningful and honest conversations about why we do these things and what the problem is that we're solving. And then we select the right tools for the job. And I was very encouraged to hear about, how we go between Kanban and Scrum here, depending on the domain. So that's a very important thing, and that only comes through trying different things and failing. For some reason in our industry, failure is frowned upon, but Agile's all about picking yourself up and going around again and finding a better way. And now DevOps has come along and put it all on steroids, So we really need to be following that. And the last little point here, this slide, the colours didn't come out so well, but Agile doesn't solve problems, but people do. And people skilled in Agile are really good at solving problems. But I think we need to not focus on the tools so much and have these conversations. There's some people even gone so far on the internet to say that they want rid of Agile. Prominent software people who were there from the beginning. And I wonder what brought that on. And in some ways I can understand where they come from, but they are dead wrong. We must never get rid of Agile. We just need to remember the roots of it and where it came from and get back to that. So we need to change direction. We need to stop being about the methods. We need to continually evolve and find new things to do. And we need to stop doing some things. So the things to stop doing, and I see this around, and it makes things quite difficult at times. Over-focus on techniques, and I've mentioned that. Another thing is over-specialization. We have a lot of roles in Agile, and sometimes people wonder, what exactly does a Scrum Master do? And what exactly should a product owner be doing? And people have tried to formulate and be very prescriptive about what those things are. But that's just one example of good, and there are hundreds of them depending on your company and your team and the strengths and weaknesses. And what we need is our classic T-shaped people who can do a variety of things well, but have a depth in one area that they can really pull through with. And that's just not in the team, that's up the ranks with management. It goes the whole way. People who have tried to implement Agile at various places would know that the context is hugely important. So having T-shaped people up the chain as well, managers who don't see their job as one specific thing, but can coach and mentor and lead, are much more effective than managers who carve out a very niche job description and want to tackle it in one very specific way. And the last thing, and I mentioned this before, is handbags on LinkedIn. That's really driving me mad. We just need to stop it. I think for people external to our community, that just looks ridiculous, and we really need to move away from that. So, okay, I've had a bit of a moan. What do we need to start doing now? So, and in classic Agile retro style, what do we need to do? So, I've mentioned it before, we need to understand problems, and we need to learn, and we need to share, and we need to keep fixing things. We need to keep trying different things for different problems. The thing is that every company does something different. That's how companies work. I guess that's how Hive works. They have a unique product that makes them different from anybody else, and that makes their needs unique. So you can't go rubber stamping Agile around the place. You have to keep trying, keep fixing. So whenever we do all of these things, we're going to get rid of some of that dissatisfaction. Agile came about because of dissatisfaction, and we've come full circle now. There's a lot of dissatisfaction with Agile right now, and we need to address it. But we certainly can. We just have to remember that all the reasons for the initial dissatisfaction have come back. Complexity has crept in. What it becomes about is leadership, and everybody working in Agile is a leader, not just the Scrum Master or the product owner. Everybody throughout the team is helping everybody else in that team, mentoring each other, developing, growing as a team, and getting really strong as anything. And this is just something nice that I found. It's a bit cheesy, but I thought I would put it in. Okay, yeah. If I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes thinking about solutions. So I think that's really important. The longer we spend in our planning meetings or in our stand-ups ironing out problems together, the less time we need to spend getting it wrong at the keyboard. And that can happen a lot. This is just a parting thought. There's no magic. Agile itself is the struggle. A lot of Agile people get very concerned about if they're doing it right. If you're getting results, if your team's happy, if your business is happy, and you've adopted Agile principles, you're getting it right. Agile isn't about ticking boxes. It's about this. It's about getting into the blood and guts and hard things and addressing them and making things happen. So this is just what we need to do in finishing. We need to find and live by our core values again. So everything we do needs to be driven by that. We need to strengthen our culture and leadership. And I think a lot of prominent people on LinkedIn need to take this position. There's some quite destructive things happening, and I think people are well placed to provide this kind of mentoring and leadership. There are lots of great people on LinkedIn who really do go out there every night. They're posting, helping and advising. That's what it's all about. That's really what it's all about. So it's not all bad. There's a lot of people doing a lot of good stuff in the Agile world. But the last thing is learn and adapt. That's the basic of Agile. That's what we have to do, and we keep going until we get it right.